Before this video begins, I want to state that Stone made a video about Chris2 and AVFM. I haven't had the chance to see the video because it was flagged down. I asked Stone to give me a copy, and I have mirrored it on approximately 12 of my deeper channels I use for mirroring my videos when they're flagged. I can't say I support his message, because I never actually seen the video. Even if whatever he said is a message I do not support, I most certainly support his right to say it. Hell, if he made a video cussing at me and insulting me, I would not tolerate it being flagged. And the thing is, who flagged it? AVFM zealots who are terrified of someone not joining in their hysterical lynch mob group think? Or was it femitheist fans and other anti-MRAs who wanted to use this as an opportunity to make the AVFM guys look like they flagged it out of censorship? My money is personally going on AVFM zealots, but hey, the other is a real possibility, and I realize I have both camps watching this video right now, and therefore I am in the crosshairs. Well, if this video gets flagged, that's strike 3, and no one will even know which party pulled the trigger on me. Also, probably a good time to mention that whole primary backup channel I asked everyone to subscribe to. I forgot the password to both the channel and the email address I used, so it looks like I will have to make yet another channel. I still have a dozen or so deeper channels, but none of them are verified, thus no 15+ minute videos, and none of them have a name I am comfortable with. And I know what you're thinking: shouldn't you wait until you make another YouTube channel, announce it in your next video, then release a controversial video that's probably going to get flagged? Well, yeah, that would be the smart thing, but I've never been accused of being very smart, and sometimes you got to live dangerously. Also, aside from 2 very short video clips, this is all text to speech, so if you want, you can just read the transcript on my blog, link in the description, and on my blog you will also have links to mirrors of Stone's video. I want to start by explaining my motivations and intent. Me and Femitheist Divine are no longer friends. Our friendship had been going downhill for about a month, and after my original support on the AVFM website, in regards to her doxing, that put the final nail in the coffin. Since then we have written our goodbye and fuck you letters, with no intentions from either of us to ever rekindle our friendship. I wanted to get that out of the way to demonstrate this is not a white knight for Krista video. The situation of Krista's doxing has brought up a much-needed debate about the ethics and strategic benefits of doxing. Let us start by clarifying what doxing is. Doxing, spelled with 1 or 2 X's, is shorthand for doc dropping, and doc being short for document, and dropping being a reference to publishing, exposing. Doxing, which is internet slang and thus cannot be found in a credible dictionary, and is not by itself against the law and thus cannot be found in law, but must instead be found in common slang dictionaries, internet terminology databases, and web service terms of agreement contracts, is defined as the non-consensual publishing of personally identifiable information. Personally identifiable information, from U.S. privacy law, is defined as personally identifiable information, PII, as used in U.S. privacy law and information security, is information that can be used on its own or with other information to identify, contact, or locate a single person, or to identify an individual in context. It does not matter how the information was obtained, so long as it was published without consent. Example, a forum user named JoeBlow69 sends you a private message linking you to his Facebook account. His Facebook has a photograph of himself. You grab the photo and without permission post it back on that forum and say, this is what JoeBlow69 looks like. That, according to all the information I can gather on web service TOS that actually care to use the term doxing, would constitute as doxing. However, it can easily be argued that journalists publish people's full name with a photograph all the time, without the permission of the person they are reporting. How is this also not doxing? Well, the short answer is, technically it is doxing, and it's also one of the reasons this thing called doxing isn't against the law. Although it should be noted that sometimes doxing is. It all comes down to what information is being published, and the motivation behind it. Much like sharing files over a peer-to-peer network is not against the law, sharing copyrighted material is. When actual journalists release public information about someone, they are not accused of doxing, because the term doxing is typically used in regards to the publishing or exposing of personal information for the express purpose of creating financial or emotional damage. Journalists do not aim to cause harm, but only to report information for the sole purpose of getting people to pay for the article. If harm occurs, it's irrelevant to the actual motivation. Although to be fair, doxing doesn't technically have to be for the reason of harassment, and we also need to ask, what is an actual journalist? Of course neither Senator Feinstein nor journalists have produced a satisfactory answer. The real problem here is doxing isn't even a real word. It has not been clearly established to have 1 or 2 X's in its spelling. There is no actual official definition, and there are no court cases to make reference to, since doxing, by itself, is not illegal. Let's also consider the two different categories of offenders listed on registerher.com. The first category is recycling news information about women who's been arrested for child molestation, rape, murder, physical assault, and false rape accusations. These things are all crimes, and these people's information and mugshot is a matter of public record and reported by credible journalists. The other category is bigot, and here's the big problem. While creating a catalogue of violent and dangerous women being arrested for heinous crimes falls under the category of reporting, and is easily believed to be done for the express purpose of propagating the notion that women are very much capable of the same heinous crimes we typically associate with male behavior. However, the category of bigot does not serve any such function and is clear to everyone that you are publishing people's private information for the purpose of harassment. Bigotry, which is a highly subjective term, is not unlawful. Vanju is a rotten and detestable bigoted cunt, but her only crime is standing around calling people scum. This placing her on a list of criminals, with a target audience of MRAs, breaks anyone's suspension of disbelief that the purpose of the list is for educational purposes. Registerher.com is no longer a catalogue of female criminals to highlight to the public that women can also commit heinous crimes, and are thus unworthy of the special protection and presumption of innocence that we give them. Registerher.com is now a catalogue of any bitch that gets out of line, a way to harass and intimidate women whose obnoxious behavior and ideological motivation bothers us. It's a way to tell them, hey look, we put your full name, photo, and approximate whereabouts on our website. You better hope no one uses that information to Google your address and phone number. You better hope some sick twisted rape supporter you screamed at doesn't find you, followed by a sinister laugh. That's exactly what registerher.com has become, a harassment and intimidation site. That's what it is. I know that's what it is. The feminists know that's what it is. You know that's what it is. MRAs know that's what it is. And any journalist that comes across it when writing a piece on AVFM knows that's what it is. And any passerby who comes across the site probably from Googling something in relation to women and sexual crimes, will know that's what it is. The AVFM staff and followers can verbally deny it all they want, but no one, and I mean no one here, is fooled. There is no demographic of people out there that is fooled into believing the names of these bigots aren't put up there for the purpose of intimidation and harassment. Now, is doxing these feminists a good thing or a bad thing? It was a question asked on an AVFM article in the comments section. More accurately, I asked, is it effective in doing anything? One person answered by saying it had lowered the activist efforts of several feminists. Well, I will have to take his word for it, since feminists like Big Red came onto the scene out of nowhere and seemed to disappear just as fast. I don't keep up with these people to know how much activism they were, or are, doing, but let's look at something.
The student union says this group may look harmless, but what they're doing online is anything but.
They've been putting photos up of outspoken women on campus on their website, say if they hope they get what's coming to them.
They're referring to this, a Texas-based website called Voice for Men. Under the heading of featured offenders, women at the U of T protests are outed for being bigots. A link to longer stories on the women says, take note of how easy it is to track these people down and document their actions. The website also grabs some of the protesters' Twitter feeds, like this one. Political position, kill all men, hail Satan.
We are absolutely 100% opposed to violence. We have no patience for it. We don't think it's a legitimate tool of political change.
But the U of T student union says female students are scared.
Your feeling is that the university should ban this group from being on campus?
Yes.
And why are you hesitant to say yes?
I feel I'm going to be targeted afterwards.
Do you really?
Mm-hmm.
This news report was amazingly fair and balanced. To any casual viewer, the only thing threatening and ominous about men's rights was AVFM's Register Her, a feminist hit list. You take away the feminist hit list, and there wasn't a single negative statement about AVFM and the MRAs at U of T. That report would have come off looking like a group of men that just wanted to talk about men's issues. The feminists would have come off looking like crazy dangerous zealots who want to stifle free speech. Without that damn list, any statements the feminists made about being afraid look as hollow as they most likely are. But with that list, as you see presented in that news story, these feminists might actually be scared, and therefore might actually be justified in their protest. Or at least that's what it is going to look like to the casual viewer. It really comes off like those anti-abortion websites, where they list abortion doctors, giving you all the information you need to hunt them down and kill them. And sure, these websites don't come right out and break the law by saying go murder these people, but we know why they're there. We know this is a method of intimidation, and we know that some zealots are going to blow up the clinic or kill one of the doctors on that list. These websites help these zealots in their goal of killing abortion doctors, but they get to step back with some plausible deniability and say that they are only exposing these doctors, only releasing public information, and how people have a right to know. They are using freedom of speech and freedom of the press, and throwing their hands up and saying we're not telling anyone to do anything. But when you read over these sites, the way they depict these doctors as murderers, murdering innocent babies, and things like this man murdered X amount of little babies, and X amount of children are dead because of this man, but does he feel shame? Of course not. And the readers read this hyperbolic rhetoric, stare at the information, the names and addresses of these murderers, and after being emotionally charged up with all of this rhetoric about murdering innocent babies, they grab a gun and make the murderer stop murdering. I'm sorry, but that is how Register Her looks like. In fact, there are eerie parallels between the description of these anti-abortion sites and AVFM. Listen to the emotionally driven hyperbolic language used to charge people up with rage, when John the Other continues to call Earl Silverman's suicide an act of murder by the feminists and something he called rent-seeking bureaucrats.
Is that he was murdered by an establishment including the Canadian government. Earl Silverman was killed by the evil indifference of rent-seeking bureaucrats. Earl Silverman was murdered by the evil indifference of rent-seeking bureaucrats and gender ideologues. Now, for those evilly indifferent rent-seeking bureaucrats and ideologues, let me add something. We are coming for you. But by all means, go back to sleep for as long as you still can. We are coming for you. We are coming for you. We are coming for you. Go back to sleep for as long as you still can.
In that video he also mentioned Big Red, or as he called her, Little Red Fornication Mouth, and mentioned how she sang Crimea River, as a reply to someone bringing up men who had lost their lives, and how she did this as an exercise in power, knowing consequence would not happen. I'm sure Earl Silverman was a great man, and his loss tragic. But hand-wringing and claiming feminists murdered him, is just outrageous, and done for the express intent of emotional provocation. I understand he wanted to make the world aware of Earl, and his struggle to help men and boys, his battle to provide them with a men's shelter, and how a world that does not care about the male sex, turned their back on him, making his life's struggle all for nothing, and he could no longer live in such a cruel world and fight such a hopeless battle. I understand John's desire to make the world remember Earl, and what Earl fought for, but by mentioning the callousness of someone like Big Red and other feminists, and by saying multiple times he was murdered by these people, and having a feminist hit list on the AVFM website that he's a part of, and by ending the video with the statement that we are coming for them, conveys a vague but frightening threat and suggestion that someone needs to hunt these people down and exact revenge. And a person who has suffered a great divorce, lost his kids, lost his home and everything, a man on the edge, hearing how this man was murdered, right after watching Big Red sing Crimea River, and staring at her actual name on your Register Her, he might snap and do something bad. And not that I would really cry a river over Big Red being strangled, God knows we've all had that fantasy, but the legal ramifications for AVFM would not be good. Just realize, if anyone snaps and hurts any of the women who've been exposed, this is going to come back on AVFM. Not that I am wishing it, but I am merely stating that's how our system works. Furthermore, standing up for men's rights is a rather unpopular and detested concept. When a member of the AVFM staff goes to court, they will get as much of a fair trial as a rape suspect. I also want to point out in that video footage of John the Other, the original video did not flash images of registerher.com bigots while he's saying we're coming for you. That was me editing to convey a point. Next you have to consider things like the legal liability. Let's just use Christo as an example. Many will claim the article is not libel. Of course these people will also claim it was not erected for the purpose of harassment, intimidation, revenge, or financial ruin. AVFM is just exposing her to keep people safe, because AVFM is totally good Samaritans and stuff, and it's totally not doxing, it's only exposing. So, on the off chance that John the Other is watching, let me just say, I think it would be in AVFM's best interest to hire an impartial practicing lawyer to look over it and get his opinion. Look at it like this, Krista needs money, She can't get a job because that article is hurting her chances for employment. That article is geared specifically to damage her chances of gaining employment, and it is simultaneously harassing her. She has an emotional, political, and double financial motive to sue AVFM, and let's not forget, she is currently studying law. I'm sure her and her lawyer will be able to work together very close in building a powerful case against AVFM, plus there's that advantage of her being a young cute innocent female, going against an organization of angry thuggish men who are against women's rights, who run a website with a feminist hit list, and are listed as a hate group by the SPLC. In fact, I want you to think about that right there. The SPLC, famous for a lot of things, but primarily for using their law firm to target, harass, and bankrupt organizations they target as hate groups. This would be a golden opportunity for them to launch a lawsuit. You might say Krista is too dead poor to hire a lawyer, and you doubt anyone will take her case. But realize you have the SPLC's damn near infinite financial resources. Their specialty is dealing in lawsuits, and this article, whose factual clarity is very debatable, which is leading to Krista's financial ruin, could be the opportunity the SPLC needs to pull the trigger on your company. And then there is always Radfem Hub, who might be willing to funnel just enough money or legal help Krista's way, not because they care about her, but because they want to see you taken down or at least hurt. John, this article is you, Elam, and AVFM really and truly sticking your neck out there. And for what? An excuse to tell Krista to go fuck herself? A personal and emotionally driven outlash against some obscure YouTuber who runs her mouth and annoys the MRM? Is such a petty little fuck you worth the financial risk of keeping that article up? Is the gratification of striking back against a few obnoxious feminists worth the bad PR and the legal liability? I believe so long as the AVFM policy of doxing, or as they prefer to call it exposing, feminists is in place, AVFM has no prayer of passing itself off as a legitimate organization whose sole purpose is to secure the rights of men and boys. It will come off looking like a group of crazed zealots who are dangerous and thuggish. I understand that the lynch mob who makes up your audience is whipped up into an hysterical frenzy believing that this doxing of Krista will save the lives of their children, and prevent Krista from rising to be the next Hitler, and that if you take down that article they will scream at the top of their lungs, what about the children? Won't someone think of the children? But perhaps you can soothe their panic by letting them know until Krista can get a job as a typist, secretary, or apply for welfare to bleed the state dry, her only income will be babysitting the children of her friends. So she'll be babysitting now more than ever, and doing it all the while under a great deal of stress. Also, if she goes on welfare, American tax dollars will be going to fund femitheism. At least right now the cost of all of her bullshit is coming from her own pockets, and possibly other feminist money. At least your taxes ain't paying for it yet, and if she goes on welfare, she'll have just that much more free time to be bitter and commit herself to activism. I seriously don't see how any of this is advantageous to anyone. It looks like a bad situation just waiting to backfire. In fact, the whole cataloging and exposing of feminists is a bad idea waiting to backfire. It's terrible publicity that chases away any decent person who isn't a zealot caught up in the group hysteria of we're saving lives by exposing these people. And with the SPLC having its crosshairs locked on you, waiting for you to fuck up, registerher.com is probably going to be where the fuck up happens. AVFM is going to have to choose its path, and critique its PR and behavior accordingly. You can either act as militant thugs using intimidation against obnoxious feminists, or you can be the friendly, clean-shaven safe haven for men and boys. Even if you clean up your act, and stop the doxing, your enemies will always find something to attack you for, but at least you won't be handing them their ammunition on a silver platter. Another thing, and it's related to the doxing, is the hysterical behavior I've been seeing from a lot of the MHRAs over on AVFM. I won't go into all the absolutely outrageous quotes that are so mired in professional victimhood as to make even a radical feminist appear modest and dignified, but needless to say, this hysteria that if Krista isn't doxed, children are in danger. She might even go on to rise up and become the next Stalin, Lenin, Hitler, and kill millions of people, but we doxed her and therefore saved the world. This hysterical nonsense, I believe, is the sort of thing that is provoking Bernard Chapin into screaming leftist like he's having a bout of Tourette's syndrome, because you must realize Bernard doesn't call people professional victims or sissies or idiots or any other descriptive phrase, he just calls everyone a leftist. But I think it's that hysterical hand-wringing and professional victimhood nonsense that is triggering his leftist Tourette's syndrome. I believe this is one of the big reasons he keeps calling AVFM a voice for unmanly men. And I believe it's what Chapin's friends and followers are mostly bitching about, when Rocking Mystery talks about so many of them over there, that AVFM are as bad as the feminists, want to be victims etc. I'm not on good terms with Chapin, or even Rocking Mystery for that matter, but give the devils their due, they have a point. Some of the hysteria and professional victimhood is just sickening, and I believe this attitude is the direct manifestation of the hyperbolic hysterical rhetoric that is used to justify the doxing and thus harassment and intimidation of feminists. It spreads to the rank and file who begin repeating the mantra, and becomes a part of the groupthink, and then is used to justify other unscrupulous and militant actions. Stone's video in support of Krista was flagged down, no doubt by people who used the mental gymnastics to convince themselves that anyone who doesn't join in with the lynch mob is advocating the systematic castration and genocide of males. And therefore flagging isn't unscrupulous censorship, it is an act to protect millions of male babies from abortion, and millions of men from castration, and if all it takes is flagging a video to save the world, then so be it. And if anyone has a problem with it, then they're a part of the problem, not the solution. That sort of rationality is starting to run pretty high, and that mindset can turn into a Frankenstein really fast. And like I said, I believe the hysterical hand-wringing which made me feel like I was surrounded by a bunch of hysterical housewives, like a bunch of damn women, who were acting as bad as the feminists. Oh dear God in heaven, I just realized I agreed with something the woolly bumblebee said. Oh Jesus, I feel dirty now. Thanks to John the other, I just agreed with the woolly bumblebee. John, if I ever meet you in a dark alley. Anyhow, I think the hysterical hand-wringing comes from the over-the-top emotionally driven hyperbolic language used to justify doxings. Registerher.com and the pro-doxing policy is a legal and financial liability. In addition to that, the type of rhetoric used to justify it has created a professional victim pathology that has spread through AVFM's rank and file. This has given AVFM an atmosphere of thuggish bullies and professional victims that holds AVFM back from reaching its potential. AVFM, with its many great speakers and columnists, has the potential to be the flagship of the MRM, and to really be the face of the movement. Every movement requires a friendly, squeaky clean, diplomatic face to represent the cause. Often, this is even used to shield the more militant and radical individuals and organizations. It is impractical for a grassroots movement to succeed so long as it's being led by its most extremist and militant individuals and organizations. If AVFM wants to be the flagship, it is going to have to adopt a kinder, gentler persona, behave more professionally and diplomatic, and completely remove itself from thuggish intimidation which is currently acting as this flagship's anchor. Do away with registerher.com, or at least remove the entries of bigots, and all articles whose sole purpose is to dox, or expose, an individual to harass and intimidate them.